الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And good morning, Instagram fam, friends and followers of as-Saafiy, and welcome to another episode of Revert Reflections. Yesterday we concluded our session with the question, what is life and when does it begin from the Islamic perspective? And answering this question, as we alluded to yesterday, is very important and critical to our discussion, because once life is established, taking it without legal authority is murder, even if that life is the life of an unborn child. The scholars of Islam, brothers and sisters, have debated this issue historically and have drawn different conclusions concerning it. Some of the scholars opine that life begins with conception or shortly thereafter, because from that time, the time of conception, the conceived fetus requires sustenance, evolves, grows, and develops, all indications of a living organism. This opinion, brothers and sisters, is the safest of all opinions, the opinion or the belief that life begins from conception or shortly thereafter. A number of scholars, however, appear to hold the view that life begins and the corresponding Islamic rulings apply within the first 40 days of pregnancy, not immediately at the time of conception or shortly thereafter, but after 40 days. But the majority of the scholars of Islam are of the opinion that life begins when the soul is married to the body of the fetus 120 days into pregnancy. And this is based upon two things. Number one, all of the evidence that Islam has provided us, which indicates that the soul is what gives life to the body. And what we mean by life is the life that humans live and the life that animate objects live, not the life that inanimate objects live, like plants. Plants grow, they develop, they evolve, but they don't have a soul. They're not living like animals live and like humans live, because animals and humans have souls. And so what gives us human life, or the life as life in the human sense, or the sense of animate objects is intended, is the soul itself, and not just the fact that we evolve and develop and grow, etc. and so on. The second thing, or the second consideration, is the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, collected by Bukhari and Muslim, in which the Prophet ﷺ indicated that at 120 days of the pregnancy, Allah sends an angel to breathe the soul, the life-giving soul, into the fetus. And that hadith, it reads, or the pertinent part of the hadith reads, إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ يُجْمَعُ خَلْقُهُ فِي بَطْنِ أُمِّهِ 40 يَوْمًا نُطْفَةً ثم يكون علقة مثل ذلك ثم يكون مضغة مثل ذلك ثم يرسل الملك فينفخ فيه الروح. He says, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what means the creation of one of you occurs in the womb of his mother for 40 days as a mixture of fluids, then as a clot of blood for a similar amount of time, then as a lump of flesh for a similar amount of time. And then Allah sends an angel to breathe the life-giving soul into him or her. So based upon the above, everything that we've said, the scholars of Islam have the following views on abortion. So we talked about when life occurs and how that obviously has a bearing on the ruling. And now based upon that discussion and the difference of opinion that has occurred therein, the scholars of Islam have basically the following views on the issue of the permissibility of abortion in Islam. The first one is that after 120 days, if a woman were to seek an abortion or have an abortion, what would be the ruling of that? After 120 days, all of the scholars of Islam, without exception, consider it absolutely illegal. There is not a scholar from the scholars of Islam who legalizes abortion after 120 days. This is something which is unanimously agreed upon by the scholars, because it is clear from the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud that at that point, the fetus in the womb is a living human being, the taking of whose life would be murder. But because of the difference of opinion about life before that, the scholars have differed about abortion before 120 days. Most of the scholars are of the opinion that it's illegal. Even before 120 days, they would not legalize abortion. But some scholars allow it for good reason. If there was a legitimate excuse, for example, if the pregnancy is something which is deemed by specialists and experts that it would be harmful or life-threatening for the woman. If this was discovered before 120 days, they would permit an abortion in a case like that. And number three, absolutely allowed. Some scholars, a good number of them, absolutely allow abortion before 120 days because to them, in their mind, the fetus in the womb before 120 days does not constitute a living human being. And so these are the views of the Muslim scholars throughout history and contemporarily regarding this issue. After 120 days, absolutely legal. Before 120 days, they've differed. Some of them absolutely prohibiting it, some of them permitting it for a good cause, and some of them absolutely allowing it because as far as they are concerned, the fetus in the womb is not yet a living human being the taking of whose life would be prohibited. These are the opinions. This is where Islam is and Islamic scholarship is on the issue. And now there's more to say about this because there's a lot that is said by the non-Muslims to justify abortion regardless of the point in the pregnancy at which that occurs. And we need to know where our religion stands on some of these counter arguments by the pro-abortion people and the people who are pro-choice, as they say. And so we'll take a look at those statements, those arguments, and how Islam responds to them in the coming days. Until then, brothers and sisters, as always, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless your houses, to bless your spouses, to bless your children, to bless your sources of livelihood and income, to bless you and make you blessed wherever you may be. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to shower you with His blessings and to surround you with His protection. Ameen, ameen, ya Rabbal Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak on Nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.